You know what it's like when someone stabs you in the back while you're already on your knees? When the person you trusted most looks at your grief and sees opportunity. That was me 3 years ago. My mother died, and I was drowning. My name is Morgan Robinson, and I'm 37 years old. My wife Valerie, 6 years of marriage, she chose that moment to walk away. Served me divorce papers through her lawyer Todd Whitmore, while I was still processing my mother's funeral. Called me weak, pathetic, a financial burden she couldn't carry anymore. She'd been screwing Derek Harrison for 4 months. Some real estate developer she thought was successful. I felt rage, devastation. But underneath it all, cold clarity settled in my chest. Because Valerie had no idea I'd just inherited $153 million from my mother's estate. I didn't get mad the way she expected. I got methodical. I made her face every single consequence of her choice, stripped away her delusions one by one until she understood exactly what she'd thrown away. This is about justice, about making sure people who abandon you at your lowest point learn that actions have consequences. You'll find satisfaction in what comes next. But let me start from the beginning. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. I stood in my mother's empty house the day after her funeral, surrounded by decades of memories packed into cardboard boxes, and I couldn't breathe. The smell hit me first, her lavender soap still lingering in the bathroom, that specific brand she'd used since I was a kid. I remembered being 7, sitting on the edge of the tub watching her get ready for work, both of us pretending everything was fine even though Dad had just walked out. Mom died of a sudden heart attack at 62. No warning, no goodbye. Just a phone call that shattered my world. She'd been my only family, my best friend. For 3 weeks I'd barely functioned, calling in sick to my accounting job, sleeping maybe 2 hours a night, walking through life like a ghost. Valerie had been cold through the whole thing. At the funeral, she stood apart from me, checking her phone, barely acknowledging the mourners who offered condolences. When we got home that night, I tried to talk to her about how I was feeling. She rolled her eyes. "You need to snap out of this," she said. "It's been weeks. My mother just died. And I'm sorry about that, I really am. But life goes on, and we have bills to pay. You can't just shut down like this." I didn't answer. What was there to say? The next evening, a week after the funeral, I came home to find Valerie sitting at our kitchen table with a man I'd never seen before. Mid-30s, athletic build, expensive watch, perfect teeth. The kind of guy who looked like he'd never had a hard day in his life. "Who's this?" I asked. Valerie looked at me with something like disgust. "This is Todd Whitmore, my attorney." My stomach dropped. Attorney for what? Todd stood up, extending his hand. I didn't take it. He smoothly pulled it back and picked up a folder from the table. "Mr. Robinson, I'm here on behalf of your wife. She's filing for divorce." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" Valerie stood too, crossing her arms. "I can't do this anymore. You've been a mess for months, even before your mom died. You're depressed, you're barely working, you're emotionally unavailable. I deserve better than this. My mother just died 3 weeks ago, and you've done nothing but wallow." Her voice rose, sharp and cutting. "You think I signed up to be a caretaker? To prop up a grown man who can't handle basic adult responsibilities? I'm 34 years old. I don't have time to wait for you to get your act together." Rage bloomed in my chest, hot and clarifying. "So you're kicking me while I'm down. That's your play here?" "I'm being realistic," she snapped. "We're barely scraping by on your income when you actually bother to show up for work. We have no savings. No prospects. You inherited your mom's house, sure, but it needs $50,000 of work before we could even sell it. I can't build a future with someone who's falling apart." Todd cleared his throat. "Mrs. Robinson has asked me to inform you that she'll be seeking a fair division of assets, including equity in your mother's property." Something cold and sharp crystallized in my mind. "You want half of my dead mother's house. It became marital property the moment you inherited it," Todd said smoothly. "California is a community property state." I looked at Valerie, really looked at her. Her expensive highlights, her fresh manicure, her designer purse I'd watched her charge to our credit card last month. How long have you been planning this? She had the decency to look away. Does it matter? Yeah, it matters. I kept my voice level. Do you have someone else lined up, someone to land on? Her face flushed. What are you implying? I'm asking a simple question. You don't leave a 6-year marriage overnight unless you've got somewhere to go. Someone to go to. So who is he? Todd moved toward the door. This is deteriorating rapidly. Mrs. Robinson, perhaps we should. His name is Derek Harrison, Valerie said defiantly. He's a real estate developer. He owns 3 properties in Orange County. He treats me like I'm worth something, which is more than you've done in years. The admission should have hurt more than it did. Instead, I felt almost relieved. Everything was finally clear. How long? 4 months. 4 months. I nodded slowly. So you've been screwing him since before my mother got sick. You were already gone. I stayed for the funeral out of respect, she said. But yes, I've been done with this marriage for a while. Derek helped me see what I was missing. I looked at Todd. You can go. Tell Derek Harrison he can have her. But he should know she's expensive, disloyal, and incredibly predictable. Todd practically fled. Valerie grabbed her purse, her face twisted with fury. You're going to regret that. No, I said. I really don't think I will. She laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. What are you going to do? You're broke, you're broken, and now you're going to be divorced. Good luck with your sad little life. She slammed the door on her way out. I stood in my kitchen, in the house I'd shared with her for 3 years, and I felt something I hadn't felt since Mom died. Absolute clarity. I walked to my home office and pulled out the folder Nicholas Sanders had given me at the reading of the will. I'd been too devastated to really process it at the time, too overwhelmed by loss to understand what I was looking at. Now I opened it with steady hands and read every word. My mother had been incredibly wealthy. She'd never told me, never shown it. She lived modestly in her small house, drove a 15-year-old car, clipped coupons like money was tight. But she'd been a silent partner in a tech company since the 90s, a company that had gone public 10 years ago and made her fortune multiply exponentially. She'd also invested brilliantly in real estate, buying properties in areas that eventually exploded in value. The total estate value, $153 million. It was all mine. The house, the investments, the stock portfolios, the properties, everything. The probate process would take a few months to finalize, but Nicholas had assured me it was ironclad. Mom's will was airtight. Valerie had no idea. She'd filed for divorce thinking she was escaping poverty, that she'd get maybe $100,000 from the house after repairs and sale. She'd walked away from $150 million. I sat back in my chair, and for the first time in a month I smiled. The morning after Valerie walked out, I called Nicholas Sanders. He picked up on the second ring. Morgan, I've been expecting your call. My wife just filed for divorce, I said. There was a pause. She doesn't know about the inheritance. No. When did she file? Yesterday. Her attorney's name is Todd Whitmore. Another pause. Longer this time. Todd Whitmore is a mediocre divorce attorney who specializes in intimidating people into bad settlements. He's also Derek Harrison's personal attorney. You know Harrison? Real estate developer, 3 properties, leveraged to the eyeballs on all of them, Nicholas said. He's got maybe $2 million in actual equity if he's lucky. He projects wealth but lives on credit. I felt that cold smile return. My wife left me for him. She thinks she's trading up. She's in for a surprise. Nicholas's voice was dry. Here's what's going to happen. The inheritance isn't community property because your mother died after the marriage was already deteriorating. The assets weren't commingled. But we need to move fast. File your financial disclosures before the estate clears probate. Show your current income, current assets. The house is in probate, so it's not divisible yet. By the time Whitmore figures out what's happening, it'll be too late. She called me a burden, I said. She wants half of everything. Then we'll make sure she gets exactly half of nothing, Nicholas said. I'll draw up response papers. We'll file today. And I want you to do something else, document everything. Every text message she sends, every interaction with Whitmore. Everything Harrison says if you ever cross paths. We're going to build a case that she abandoned the marriage during your time of grief for financial gain. She admitted she's been cheating for 4 months. Even better, California is no fault, but that'll matter in the court of public opinion later. For now, we focus on the legal strategy. Don't engage with her, don't get emotional, stay cold, stay focused. Can you do that? Yes, I said, and I meant it. 3 months crawled by. Valerie got increasingly aggressive through Todd Whitmore, demanding half the house, half my retirement account, spousal support. Whitmore sent threatening letters weekly, legal jargon designed to intimidate, to make me feel cornered, to force a settlement. I ignored all of it. Let Nicholas handle everything. I kept going to work, kept my head down, kept documenting. Every text Valerie sent got screenshotted and forwarded to Nicholas. Every demand Whitmore made went into a file. I was building something brick by brick and nobody on the other side had a clue. The estate cleared probate 2 weeks before our final divorce hearing. Nicholas called me the day the paperwork cleared. It's done. Done? The money is yours. $153 million, officially and legally yours. Completely separate from the marriage. She has no claim to any of it. I sat down slowly. When does she find out? At the hearing. Whitmore hasn't done his due diligence. He never checked for recent probate closures. He's assuming you're still broke. And when he realizes, it'll be too late, Nicholas said. The divorce will be finalized based on the assets that existed when she filed. She'll get exactly what she asked for. Half of nothing. I looked out my window at the modest apartment I'd been living in since Valerie kicked me out of our house. 3 months of her thinking she'd won. 3 months of Whitmore's threatening letters. 3 months of Derek Harrison thinking he'd stolen another man's wife. Good, I said. The divorce hearing was held in a county courthouse, a small room with ugly fluorescent lights and worn furniture that made everything feel cheaper than it was. Valerie sat with Todd Whitmore, dressed like she was going to a cocktail party. Designer dress, expensive jewelry, hair and makeup perfect. She looked confident, almost smug. Next to her sat Derek Harrison, tall, tan, expensive suit, perfect teeth. The exact kind of empty swagger I'd expected. Nicholas sat beside me, calm and professional. A manila folder rested on the table in front of him. Judge Diane Clarkson took the bench, a tired-looking woman in her 50s who'd probably seen 1,000 divorces just like this one. She reviewed the filings with the practiced eye of someone who wanted to get through her docket and go home. This should be straightforward, she said. Mr. Robinson, you're representing that the marital assets consist of a joint checking account with $3,000, a shared vehicle worth $12,000, and your half of the retirement account at $32,000. Is that correct? That was correct at the time of filing, I said calmly. Todd Whitmore leaned forward. Your Honor, we believe Mr. Robinson is hiding assets. His mother's estate is not marital property. Nicholas cut in smoothly. The estate closed probate after the filing date and consists entirely of inheritance, which under California law is separate property. Nicholas slid the folder across to Judge Clarkson. Complete documentation of the estate, Your Honor. $153 million, inherited solely by my client after the marriage was already dissolved in practice. Mrs. Robinson abandoned the marriage during Mr. Robinson's period of grief. She has no claim to these assets. The room went completely silent. Valerie's face drained of color. Todd Whitmore frantically flipped through papers. Derek Harrison looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. $150 million? Valerie whispered. 53, I corrected. You were right about one thing, Valerie. You should have left earlier. You left too late. You knew... She was shaking, staring at me like I was a stranger. I knew at the will reading, I said calmly. The day before you served me with divorce papers. Nicholas told me the estate would take a few months to clear probate. So I waited. I let you file first. I let you think you were getting away with something. Todd Whitmore found his voice. Your Honor, we need to revisit the asset division. On what grounds? Judge Clarkson looked almost amused. The inheritance occurred after separation. It's clearly separate property. Mrs. Robinson is entitled to half of the assets that existed at the time of filing, which Mr. Robinson has already agreed to split fairly. She looked at me. The vehicle, the checking account, the retirement funds, you're willing to split those 50-50? Absolutely, I said. She can have half of everything we built together. That comes to about $23,000. Valerie made a sound like a wounded animal. Derek Harrison stood up abruptly and walked out of the courtroom. She watched him go, her face crumpling. Mr. Harrison appears to have somewhere else to be, I observed. Judge Clarkson signed the papers. The marriage is dissolved. Assets divided as stipulated. We're done here. I stood up, gathered my things. Valerie was crying now, ugly sobs that shook her shoulders. Todd Whitmore was staring at his paperwork like it might suddenly change. Nicholas gave me a small nod. As I walked past Valerie, she grabbed my arm. Wait, please. I made a mistake. I looked down at her hand, then at her face. You said I was a burden, that I had no ambition, that you deserved better. I was wrong. I was angry. Please, we can fix this. No, I said simply. We can't. You made your choice. You chose to abandon your husband 1 month after he buried his mother. You don't get to unmake that choice now. I love you, she sobbed. I always loved you. You love the idea of security. You just bet on the wrong horse. I pulled my arm free. Enjoy your $23,000. I hope it was worth it. I walked out of that courthouse into bright California sunshine, and for the first time since my mother died, I felt like I could actually breathe. 6 months after I walked out of that courtroom, I barely recognized my own life. I quit my accounting job. Just walked in one Monday morning, handed in my resignation, and felt a weight lift off my shoulders I hadn't even known I was carrying. I hired a team of financial advisors, serious people who understood generational wealth, tax strategies, investment portfolios, the kind of people Valerie would have killed to have access to. I bought a house in Newport Beach. Nothing crazy, nothing ostentatious. Just a clean, modern 4-bedroom with ocean views and enough space to breathe. The first night I slept there, I woke up without that crushing weight on my chest. Progress. I started therapy too. Twice a week with a grief counselor who didn't let me hide behind anger or cold satisfaction. We talked about Mom, really talked about her, about the life she'd built alone, the sacrifices she'd made, the woman she'd been beyond just my mother. It hurt like hell, but it was the right kind of hurt, the kind that meant healing instead of festering. I joined a gym, hired a personal trainer, started taking care of myself the way I should have been all along, not for anyone else, just for me. But the thing that mattered most? I started a foundation, the Mary Ann Robinson Foundation for Single Parents, $50 million endowed, scholarships, child care assistance, job training programs, everything Mom had needed when she was raising me alone, working 2 jobs, stretching every dollar until it screamed. Everything she'd never asked for but deserved. The foundation work felt good, purposeful. It gave my grief somewhere to go besides inward, turned all that pain into something that actually helped people. Mom would have loved it. Hell, she probably would have insisted on volunteering even though it was her own foundation. I started dating too. Casually at first, just reminding myself what it felt like to be wanted, appreciated, valued. To have someone look at me like I mattered instead of like I was a burden they couldn't wait to escape. And then I met Claire Jensen, pediatric surgeon, 33, brilliant and kind with a laugh that made my chest ache in the best possible way. We met at a charity event for the foundation. I'd shown up in jeans and a polo shirt, looking like a volunteer instead of the guy who'd written the check. Claire had been there representing her hospital, talking to donors about partnership opportunities. We ended up at the same table, started talking, and 2 hours disappeared like nothing. She knew nothing about my money, nothing about the divorce or Valerie or the inheritance. We talked about books and travel and what made us laugh. She told me about saving a 6-year-old's life the week before and the way her whole face lit up when she described it. That's when I knew she was different. She made me feel human again. By month 8 post-divorce, we were serious. She'd met Maverick and Gabriel, my college friends who'd stuck by me through everything, who'd shown up at the funeral when Valerie was too busy checking her phone. Claire fit seamlessly into my life, brought warmth and stability I hadn't even realized I'd been missing. One night over dinner at her place, she'd made pasta from scratch which was somehow both impressive and endearing. I knew I had to tell her. "I need to tell you something," I said. She looked up from her plate, concerned. "That sounds ominous." "It's not bad, just significant." I took a breath. "I'm wealthy. Very wealthy. I inherited money from my mother and I haven't really talked about it because I wanted you to know me first." Claire set down her fork slowly. "How wealthy are we talking?" "Enough that I'll never have to work again. Enough that I started a foundation. Enough that my ex-wife would very much like to have a time machine right about now." She processed this for a moment. "Your ex-wife, the one who left you right after your mom died?" "She filed for divorce the day before she found out about the inheritance. She found out at the final hearing. It didn't go well for her." Claire's eyes widened. "Oh my God. That must have been... how did she react?" "About how you'd expect. Her boyfriend walked out of the courtroom. Her attorney looked like he wanted to disappear. She begged me to take her back. And you said no." "I said no." Claire reached across the table and took my hand. "Good. She abandoned you when you needed her most. Money doesn't change that." That's when I knew I was going to marry her. A year after the divorce, the foundation held its first major gala. Black tie fundraiser at the Beverly Hilton. 500 guests, major donors, local politicians, press coverage. The kind of event that announced you'd arrived, that what you were building mattered. Claire stood beside me in a midnight blue gown, radiant and confident. She looked like she belonged there, like she'd always belonged beside me. Maverick and Gabriel were there with their wives, dressed to the nines, grinning like proud parents at what I'd built. It felt like a celebration. Everything good I'd managed to pull from the ashes of the worst year of my life, all of it on display. Scholarships announced, partnerships formed, real change happening in real people's lives. And then Valerie walked in. I spotted her immediately. Some part of me was probably always going to be tuned to her presence, even now. She was with Derek Harrison, both of them dressed expensively but looking worn around the edges. Like expensive furniture that's been moved too many times. Valerie scanned the crowd until her eyes landed on me. Her face went pale. "That's her," I murmured to Claire. Claire followed my gaze. "She has nerve. I'll give her that." Valerie approached slowly like she was walking to her execution. Derek trailed behind her, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Up close I could see the cracks, the desperation in Valerie's eyes, the tension in Derek's jaw. "Hello," Valerie said quietly. I didn't know you'd be here. Obviously you would be. It's your event. What do you want, Valerie?" She flinched. "I wanted to see you, to talk to you. I've tried calling. I blocked your number." "I know." She glanced at Claire, then back to me. "I wanted to tell you I'm sorry. For everything. I was cruel and selfish and I threw away the best thing in my life. I think about it every day." Derek cleared his throat. "We should go." "No," Valerie snapped. "I need to say this." She looked at me with tears already forming. "I made a terrible mistake. The worst mistake of my life. And I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway. I'm begging for it." "Why?" I asked calmly. "Why now? Is it because you're sorry or because you're broke?" Her face flushed. "It's not about money. It's always been about money with you," I said. "You left me because you thought I was poor. Now you want back in because you know I'm not. How's Derek's real estate empire working out? Still got those 3 properties?" Derek's face hardened. "We're doing fine." "Really? Because from what I hear, you're underwater on 2 of them and about to lose the 3rd. Turns out leveraging everything on credit only works when the market's going up. But you wouldn't know anything about actual wealth, would you? Just the appearance of it." "Who the hell do you think you are?" Derek snapped. "I'm the man whose wife you stole," I said pleasantly. "How's that working out for you? She's expensive, isn't she? All those designer bags, the restaurants, the lifestyle. Getting hard to keep up?" Valerie was crying openly now. "Please, stop. You told me I was a burden," I continued, my voice never rising above conversational. "You said I had no ambition. You said you deserved better. And maybe you were right. Maybe you did deserve better than a grieving man who loved you. But what you got instead was a con man in over his head who's about to lose everything. That's not better, Valerie. That's just sadder. Claire squeezed my hand gently, a reminder to stay measured. I took a breath. I'm not interested in your apologies, I told Valerie. I'm not interested in your regrets. You made your choice at the worst possible moment in my life, and you made it for the worst possible reasons. I've moved on. I'm happy. I suggest you do the same. With her? Valerie looked at Claire with something like hatred. You moved on pretty fast. I moved on when someone worth knowing came into my life, I said. Claire's a surgeon. She saves children's lives for a living. She's brilliant, kind, and she was there for me when I needed support. Not because of what I could give her, but because of who I am. That's what real partnership looks like. You wouldn't understand. Derek grabbed Valerie's arm. We're leaving. But before they could go, Maverick appeared with a photographer. Hey, quick photo for the event coverage. Found her with some of our generous donors. We're not donors, Derek said quickly. Really? Maverick looked at the guest list. Huh, gate crashers then. That's interesting. Security's going to want to talk to you both. Valerie's face went crimson. We were invited. By whom? I asked. Because I sure as hell didn't invite you, and I personally approved every name on that list. 2 security guards approached. Valerie was sobbing. Derek was red-faced with humiliation, and the entire scene was playing out in front of 500 of LA's wealthiest, most connected people. Someone's phone was out, recording. Escort them out, I said quietly to security. They're not welcome here. As they were led away, Valerie turned back one last time. I loved you, she cried. I really did. No, I said. You loved the idea of me. There's a difference. They disappeared through the exit. The gala continued. Claire pulled me onto the dance floor, and I let the music and her presence wash away the ugliness of the confrontation. You handled that well, she said. I handled it like she deserved. Are you okay? I looked around the ballroom, at the foundation I'd built, the lives we were changing, the friends who'd stood by me, the woman in my arms who chose me for who I was. Yeah, I said. I really am. 2 months after the gala, everything fell apart. I got a call from Nicholas Sanders on a Tuesday morning. His voice was tight, clipped, the way it got when something was seriously wrong. We have a problem, he said. My stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Valerie's filed a motion to reopen the divorce. She's claiming fraud, that you deliberately concealed assets during the proceedings. She's got a new attorney, someone much more aggressive, Morgan Adams. My blood went cold. Can she do that? She can file. Whether she'll win is another question. But Adams is good, and he's building a case that you knew about the inheritance before the divorce filing, and deliberately hid it to deprive Valerie of her community property rights. That's insane, I said. The estate hadn't cleared probate. But you knew it was coming. Nicholas interrupted. That's their angle. They're going to argue you manipulated the timeline to defraud her. Can they prove it? They're trying. They've subpoenaed me, you, anyone who might have known about the estate. They're going through your emails, your phone records, everything. If they can show you had knowledge of the inheritance's value before Valerie filed. I did have knowledge, I said. You told me at the will reading. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then we need to be very, very careful about how we proceed. The next 3 months were a nightmare. Morgan Adams was relentless. Depositions, document requests, aggressive motions. Valerie was all over social media, playing the victim, claiming I'd psychologically abused her during the marriage, that I'd used my grief to manipulate her, that I'd stolen her future. Some people believed her. The narrative of the heartless rich man screwing over his devoted wife played well. I started getting hate mail. The foundation took hits. 3 major donors pulled out citing reputational concerns. There were protests at one of our events, people with signs calling me a fraud and a thief. Claire stood by me, but I could see the strain. Her hospital colleagues were asking questions. Her family was concerned. The press was relentless, camping outside our house, following us to dinner. This is insane, I told Nicholas one afternoon. She left me. She admitted to cheating. She called me a burden and walked out 1 month after my mother died. How is any of this my fault? It's not about fault, Nicholas said grimly. It's about money. Adams convinced her she can win a settlement just to make this go away. He's working on contingency, 30% of whatever they get. So he's motivated to drag this out, make it as painful as possible until you're willing to pay just to end it. I'm not paying her a dime. Then we go to trial. And trials are unpredictable. Juries are sympathetic to abandoned wives. If they can make you look calculating. I was grieving my dead mother. I know, Nicholas said. But we need to prove that. And we need to show that the timeline works in your favor, that you couldn't have concealed assets you didn't legally possess yet. The preliminary hearing was set for December, 15 months after the original divorce. The judge would decide if there was enough evidence to proceed to a full trial. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The stress was crushing. Everything I'd built felt like it was slipping away, and the woman who'd abandoned me was the one holding the knife. Claire found me one night in my home office, staring at legal documents at 2 a.m. She sat down beside me. Talk to me. I can't lose this, I said. Not to her. Not after everything she did. You won't. You don't know that. I know you, Claire said firmly. You're a good man who got dealt a terrible hand and played it with integrity. You didn't manipulate anything. You just protected yourself from someone who'd already abandoned you. And I know that truth matters. Truth doesn't always win. Then we make sure it does. She took my hand. We fight, together. And we don't stop fighting until this is over. I pulled her close, holding on like she was the only stable thing in a world gone mad. The preliminary hearing was held on a freezing December morning. The courtroom was packed, press in the back rows, curious onlookers filling every available seat, Valerie's supporters scattered throughout. Morgan Adams sat at the plaintiff's table looking polished and confident in an expensive suit, his silver hair perfectly styled. Next to him, Valerie wore a modest navy dress, her face carefully composed into an expression of somber sympathy. She was playing her role perfectly. Nicholas had spent weeks preparing documentation, testimony, expert witnesses. But I knew it would come down to credibility. Who would Judge Clarkson believe? Judge Diane Clarkson entered the courtroom, the same woman who'd presided over my original divorce. She looked distinctly unimpressed with the circus her courtroom had become. Let's get started, she said, settling into her chair. Mr. Adams, you're up. Morgan Adams stood smoothly, buttoning his jacket. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Mr. Robinson knew about his inheritance before the divorce filing. He deliberately concealed this information to deprive my client of her rightful share of community property. His own attorney, Nicholas Sanders, informed him of the estate's value at the will reading, which occurred before Mrs. Robinson filed for divorce. Mr. Robinson then waited. He allowed the divorce to proceed. He only revealed the truth when it was too late for my client to adjust her claims. This is textbook fraud. Nicholas rose to his feet. Your Honor, everything Mr. Adams just said is technically accurate but fundamentally misleading. Yes, my client knew his mother's estate existed. Yes, he knew its approximate value. But he did not legally possess those assets until probate closed, which occurred after the divorce was filed. He couldn't have disclosed assets he didn't own. Furthermore, Mrs. Robinson abandoned the marriage during my client's period of grief. She admitted to a 4-month affair. She explicitly stated she was leaving because she believed Mr. Robinson had no financial prospects. She gambled and lost. That's not fraud, Your Honor. That's consequences. Judge Clarkson made a note. Mr. Adams, call your first witness. I call Valerie Robinson to the stand. Valerie walked to the witness box, her steps measured and careful. She placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and sat down. Morgan Adams approached her with practiced sympathy. Mrs. Robinson, can you describe how your husband changed during your marriage? Valerie's eyes filled with tears. He became distant, cold. After his mother got sick, he just shut down. I tried to be supportive, I really did, but he pushed me away. He stopped talking to me, stopped coming to bed. I felt abandoned, emotionally and financially. And the affair? I know I made mistakes, she said, her voice breaking. The affair was wrong. I was lonely and scared. But I never would have left if I'd known about the money. I would have stayed. I would have supported him through his grief. I loved him. It was a good performance. Even I almost believed her. Judge Clarkson looked at Nicholas. Cross-examination? Nicholas stood. Mrs. Robinson, you just testified you would have stayed if you'd known about the inheritance. But you also testified you'd been having an affair with Derek Harrison for 4 months before filing for divorce. Can you explain how those two statements are compatible? Valerie faltered. I was confused. The affair was a mistake. You told my client, and I quote, "Derek treats me like I'm worth something." Those were your words, yes? I was angry. You also told him, "I've been done with this marriage for a while," and that Derek Harrison helped you see what you were missing. A real man with drive and vision. Do you remember saying that? Her face flushed. Yes, but so you weren't confused. You were deliberately leaving for someone you believed was wealthier. You told Mr. Robinson that Derek Harrison owned 3 properties, that he was a successful developer. You were trading up, weren't you? Objection, Morgan Adams said sharply. Argumentative. I'll rephrase, Nicholas said smoothly. Mrs. Robinson, were you aware of Derek Harrison's financial situation when you began your relationship with him? He told me he was successful. Did you know he was over-leveraged? That his properties were mortgaged beyond their value? That he was, in fact, in significant debt? No, I didn't. So you left a husband you believed was poor for a lover you believed was rich. And when you discovered your husband was actually wealthy and your lover was actually in debt, you suddenly wanted your marriage back. Is that accurate? Valerie was crying again. But these tears looked different. Panicked. Desperate. It wasn't like that. Then how was it? She had no answer. Nicholas called me to the stand next. I told my story simply, honestly. Mom's death, my grief, Valerie's coldness, the timing of everything. I didn't embellish or perform. I just told the truth. Morgan Adams approached me for cross-examination. When did you decide not to tell your wife about the inheritance? The moment she told me she was leaving, I said. The moment her attorney walked into my house and told me she wanted half of everything I'd built and inherited. She'd already made her choice. She'd already decided I was worthless. I wasn't going to reward that. So you admit you concealed it deliberately. I admit I didn't share information about assets I didn't legally own with a person who just abandoned me, I said. Yes, absolutely. Judge Clarkson called a recess. When we returned an hour later, she had her ruling. I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony, Judge Clarkson said, and I'm denying the motion to reopen. Here's why, Mr. Robinson did not possess the assets in question at the time of the original divorce filing or proceedings. The estate was in probate. He had no legal obligation to disclose anticipated future assets, especially to a spouse who had already filed for divorce and explicitly stated she was leaving due to his perceived lack of financial prospects. Mrs. Robinson made a calculated decision based on incorrect assumptions. That's unfortunate for her, but it's not fraud. The original divorce decree stands. This matter is closed. Morgan Adams stood. Your Honor, Mr. Adams, I suggest your client move on with her life and stop trying to profit from a marriage she willingly ended. We're done here. The gavel came down. Nicholas squeezed my shoulder. Claire was crying with relief. Across the aisle, Valerie sat frozen, her face a mask of devastation. I walked past her on my way out. She didn't try to stop me this time. She just watched me go. And I didn't look back. Claire and I got married on a beach in Laguna, just after sunrise. The sky was pale pink and gold, the ocean calm, the sand cool under our feet. 20 people total, Maverick and Gabriel standing beside me in rolled-up dress pants. Claire's sister as her maid of honor, our parents, a handful of friends who'd been there through everything. No photographers, no fanfare. Just a simple ceremony with an officiant who kept it short and meaningful. Claire wore a white dress that moved in the ocean breeze. I wore a linen suit. When I slipped the ring on her finger, my hand was steady. When she said I do, I felt something lock into place. Something that had been broken for years, finally healed. We honeymooned in Italy for a month. Tuscany first, rolling hills covered in vineyards, small towns where we ate pasta and drank wine and walked through medieval streets until our feet hurt. Then Rome, where we stood in the Colosseum and threw coins in the Trevi fountain and forgot for whole days at a time that there'd ever been legal battles or courtrooms or a woman named Valerie who'd tried to destroy me. Claire laughed more in Italy than I'd ever heard her laugh. She'd grab my hand and pull me down cobblestone alleys to find some hidden restaurant, or wake me at dawn to watch the sunrise from our hotel balcony. She was radiant, free. And watching her, I understood what it meant to build a life with someone instead of just surviving beside them. When we got back to Newport Beach, she told me she was pregnant. I remember the moment exactly, standing in our kitchen, jet-lagged and exhausted, and Claire holding up the test with tears in her eyes. I couldn't speak. I just pulled her close and held on, overwhelmed by joy so intense it actually hurt. After everything dark and difficult, this new life felt like redemption. Claire glowed through her pregnancy. I'm not talking metaphorically. She actually glowed, her skin luminous, her eyes bright. I went to every doctor's appointment, read every parenting book I could find, prepared the nursery with obsessive care, painting the walls a soft yellow, assembling the crib 3 times to make sure it was perfect. The foundation thrived during those months. We funded 50 scholarships that year, helped 200 single parents get job training, provided childcare assistance to over 1,000 families. Mom's legacy was living, breathing, making a difference in countless lives. I thought about Mom constantly during Claire's pregnancy, how she would have loved Claire, how excited she would have been to become a grandmother, how much she'd sacrificed raising me alone, working 2 jobs, going without so I could have what I needed. I wished desperately that she could see what I'd built from the grief of losing her. In the spring, Claire went into labor. 14 hours. 14 hours of intense, brutal labor. I held her hand through all of it, coached her breathing, wiped her forehead, told her she was incredible and strong and doing amazing. She cursed at me twice, apologized immediately both times, then cursed at me again. When our daughter finally arrived, the nurse, a woman named Dr. Patricia Sullivan, who'd been calm and steady through the entire delivery, placed the baby in my arms. She was tiny, perfect. She had Claire's nose and a shock of dark hair that stood up in every direction. Her eyes were closed, her fingers curled into fists, her whole body warm and impossibly fragile against my chest. Marianne, Claire whispered from the bed, exhausted but smiling. Her name is Marianne, named after my mother, after the strongest woman I'd ever known. I looked down at my daughter, at Marianne, and felt something settle in my chest. Peace. Actual, real peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of something bigger. Purpose. Family. Love that wasn't conditional or transactional. I thought about everything that had to break for this moment to exist. Losing Mom. Valerie's betrayal. The grief that nearly destroyed me. All of it led here. To this hospital room. To this family. To this profound sense of wholeness. I leaned down close to Marianne's tiny ear. You're named after the strongest woman I ever knew, I whispered, and I promise you'll know her story. Her strength. Her legacy. Claire reached out and took my hand. The 3 of us sat together in the quiet hospital room while sunlight streamed through the window, warm and golden. And I understood, finally understood, that this moment, this family, this hard-won peace was exactly what Mom would have wanted for me all along. Present day. I'm sitting on my patio watching the sunset paint the Pacific in shades of orange and gold. Claire's beside me reading some medical journal with baby Marianne asleep on her chest. Maverick and Gabriel are coming over for dinner tonight with their families. The foundation just announced a major expansion. We're going national next year. Life is good, stable, meaningful. You know what's strange? I don't think about Valerie much anymore. But when I do, it's without the anger that used to burn in my chest. She's just a person who made terrible choices. That's her burden to carry, not mine. A year ago, I ran into Derek Harrison outside a bankruptcy attorney's office in downtown LA. He looked haggard, older, defeated, the swagger completely gone. Derek, I said. He turned, recognized me. His face hardened. Come to gloat? No, just passing by. How are you doing? He laughed, bitter, hollow. How do you think? Lost everything. Properties foreclosed. Business dissolved. He paused, shook his head. And Valerie? She left 6 months after you won that court case. Found some other guy she thought had money. Story of my life. I'm sorry, I said. And I meant it. Not for him exactly, but for the waste of it all. No, you're not, he snapped. You got everything. The money, the girl, the happy ending. I got what I earned, I corrected. And I lost what I deserved to lose, a wife who never loved me. You got the same deal. Maybe think about that. I left him there and went home to my family. As for Valerie, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she burned through 3 more relationships in 2 years. Each time targeting men she thought were wealthy. Each time discovering they weren't. She moved back in with her parents in Arizona. Works retail now. Dates sporadically. By all accounts, she's bitter, regretful, and very, very alone. I don't hate her anymore. I don't feel anything for her, really. She made her choices. She has to live with them. Back on the patio, I watch Claire turn a page, watch Mary Ann's tiny chest rise and fall with each breath. I think about Mom, how she never knew about any of this. Never knew about Valerie's betrayal or the inheritance or Claire or this beautiful granddaughter who carries her name. But I think she'd be proud, not of the money. Mom never cared about money. But of what I built from the grief and the pain. Of how I turned the worst moment of my life into something good. Valerie thought she was leaving a sinking ship. She had no idea she was jumping off a rocket. That's the thing about making choices based purely on what you think you can get from someone. You'll always miss what really matters. I got what really matters. A family who loves me, a purpose that fulfills me, a life built on integrity, not transaction. And Valerie got exactly what she chose. Nothing. That's not revenge. That's just justice. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and crimson. Claire looks up from her book and smiles at me. I smile back. Mary Ann stirs slightly but doesn't wake. Somewhere in Arizona, Valerie's living with the consequences of her choices. But here, in this moment, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I have everything that matters. And that, I think, is the best revenge of all. Not needing revenge anymore. Just living well, loving fully, knowing without question that I won. Not because Valerie lost, but because I built something real from the ashes. I reach over and take Claire's free hand. She squeezes back. Mary Ann sighs in her sleep, a tiny sound of perfect contentment. I close my eyes and breathe in the salt air and feel, for perhaps the first time in my entire life, completely whole. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.